The blood of those who wouldn't bow low filled lakes as wide as oceans.
If you destroyed the veil, wouldn't the false gods be freed?
The fable of the Evaneris depicts a lighter version of themselves. A time where any god who had the power and unlimited resources were known for their triumphs and not the whole truth. However, those will not be the stories we hear once they return. These gods have been trapped for centuries, held for torment in their misdeeds. Hello Thedosians, and welcome back to my channel. There are many Evaneris with different tales and interpretations that confuse the circumstances surrounding Mythal's death. However, I am going to narrow down and focus on the main culprits in the pantheon who had a motive against Mythal, and may return once more, furious at Fen-Harel. When visiting the Temple of Mythal, Morgan and Solas only talk about two gods in the entire pantheon, Falandin and Andruil.
Falandin, overseer of funerals and guide to the elven dead. I have heard the Dalish invoke him on their deathbed, or before quests from which they expect no return.
Solas stated that Falandin began wars to amass more slaves, and filled lakes as wide as oceans for those who wouldn't bow low to his shadow.
Mythal rallied the gods once the shadow of Falandin's hunger stretched across her own people. It was almost too late. Falandin only surrendered when his brethren bloodied him in his own temple.
I believe we are in the presence of the elven goddess Andruil, Lady of the Hunt.
Or a goddess of sacrifice, according to some.
Truly? I wonder if that is why Andruil's patron animal is the hare.
Andruil made armors of the void, hunting the forgotten ones in the thrill of the hunt, spoke about madness, things forgotten. So Mythal spread rumors of a monstrous creature and took the form of a great serpent, awaiting for Andruil at the base of a mountain, and stole her knowledge of how to find the void. After this, the great hunter could never make her way back to the abyss, and peace returned.
'Tis said the Dalish invoke her before a chase, especially if they happen to be stalking humans.
From both of these stories, these two gods have every reason to feel hatred for Mythal because they were put in their place.
They were arrogant and fickle. They warred amongst themselves. They had feuds, vendettas.
Because of that, Andruil and Falandin never forgave Mythal, perhaps even a motive to kill her and re-establish the pantheon. Abelas revealed that Mythal was slain by her own kin. Perhaps Andruil and Falandin were the very perpetrators, explaining why Solas speaks of them with deceit.
I do not believe they sing songs about Falandin's vanity.
In Tevinter Knight's callback short story, we discovered the true meaning behind Solas's final mural in Skyhold's Rotunda. The mural was left unfinished, barely sketched out as Solas left Skyhold before the battle with Corypheus. Callback revealed the mural's final form. An outline of a beast stood over a stabbed dragon, two figures painted on either side of a pane of glass with confused forms. The beast is shown to be a horrifying wolf, having absorbed the dragon's power, stood crooked over all. This mural relates exactly to Solas absorbing an aspect of Mythal's power. This was always his intention, regardless of the orb's destruction, and with Mythal's power now invested in him since the end of Inquisition, Solas has risen as the Dread Wolf, to seek justice to those who betrayed Mythal. and Fen-Harel was seemingly in the front lines of meeting the Evaneris. He states that he believes they exist, but are certainly not gods.
I don't believe they were gods, no, but I believe that they existed. Something existed to start the legends. If not gods, then mages, or spirits, or something we've never seen.
Furthermore, in Trespasser, Fen-Harel was involved with the Evaneris. He freed the elven slaves and started a slave rebellion against the Evaneris, and whom they now claimed as a rebel god.
If we get out of here, I will end Fen-Harel. After he held back the sky to imprison the gods, the dread wolf disappeared.
So after Mythal's death, Solas then began a plan to stop their lust for power once and for all.
Fen-Harel was clever. He could walk among both clans of gods without fear, and both believed he was one of them.
Solas trapped both of the gods, banishing them to their respectful realms, where they lie in an eternity of torment.
He sealed them both in their realms forever.
And when they finally went too far, I formed the Veil and banished them forever.
Therefore, we know that Fen-Harel was very clever in dueling both the Evaneris and the Forgotten Ones. He who knew their character and spirit, he eventually betrayed their trust in him. The Veil's destruction will free the Evaneris from their shackles. With centuries of this world passing, surely the Evaneris will have planned their revenge against Fen-Harel once free from their prisons.
It's showing me places. I can see some kind of city. Underground. And there's a great blackness.
They sleep, masked in a mirror, hiding, hurting, and to wake them...
In Horror of Hormark from Tevinter Nights, Gillenon's creations of monstrous beasts went beyond too far. Her loophole was to use fluids that belong in the deep sea to still create her own monsters and affect those around the mysterious substance and new forms of lyrium. So whether or not this substance could be a weapon for or against Solas, it would depend on his relationship with Gillenon in the past. In Fen-Harel and the Tree, Fen-Harel had angered Andruil by hunting the Hala without her blessing. We know in Dalish lore that Andruil granted Gillenon out of her mortal form into a white Hala. I think that Solas and Gillenon did have a relationship or an acquaintanceship with each other that angered Andruil. Gillenon was given a chance to ascend to an Evaneris, but only if she destroyed her untamed creations in 3 days, because they were too untamed to remain with the people. On the second day, she drowned the giants of the sea, except those in deep waters, for they were too well wrought, and pride stopped her hand. After this deed, she was made into a god, and somehow those deep creatures still linger in the land, because of pride, whom we know today as Solas, who preserved the creatures of the sea. Explaining the seawater substance in the Horror of Hormark. This proves that Gillenon's magic still lingers and exists in many undiscovered taigs throughout the lands of Thedas today. Will Solas use these creatures in his scheme? Is that why he saved them? Again, that depends on the relationship between Solas and Gillenon. If she opposes him, then both she and her creations would rise against Solas for revenge once the veil is torn.
The first of my people do not die so easily.
So if the Evaneris return, so would the Forgotten Ones.
And the Forgotten Ones? That it was hidden in the abyss.
The Dreadwolf helped the Evaneris in their endless wars against the Forgotten Ones. Both sides of these false gods believed he was one of them, and he tricked them all into finding a blade that would end their wars. We know from a study in Kirkwall that the Seekers of Truth created the Band of Three, who concluded that the Forbidden Ones and the Forgotten Ones were that same in nature. Turones, one of the scholars, wrote in the journal that the Forbidden Ones were the first who might have taught the Imperium blood magic near 4-2 Black. Perhaps the binding of the Forbidden Ones could be the same as the Forgotten Ones when the last of the Band of the Three confuses the Forgotten Ones being of the same kin. Like Imshale in the Masked Empire, the spirit already knows Felison's plan. Maybe he indulged in the feeling of the agent of Fen'Harel's choice and wanted to see how it would end. Or maybe the Forgotten Ones and the Forbidden Ones are just demons, like the Band of Three concluded, and therefore are powerful in knowledge that has been forbidden or forgotten throughout the ages. To conclude, if we do see the awakening of the Forgotten Ones, they will most likely belong somewhere in the void, and maybe we'll see something much more sinister with their plans. Perhaps that's why we see the Evaneris fight with them for so long. I doubt they would also forgive Fen'Harel as well. Since the Evaneris will return, I believe their remnants will already grasp some remains of beings in Thedas. Just as similar as to when the Breach stirred the Titan, the Evaneris could be having the same effect as well. The Forgotten Ones speak much closer to what Solas believes at the end of his plan. There are no gods. There is only the subject and the object, the actor and the acted upon. Those with the will to earn dominance over others gain title not by nature but by deed. Let Andruil's bow crack. Let Janae's fire grow cold. Let them build temples and lure the faithful with promises. Their pride will consume them, and I, Forgotten, will claim power of my own, apart from them until I strike in mastery.